Dr. Antipas Harris and also Bishop Van Gaten for the opportunity to share. They're always looking for new and insightful content to bring to us as leaders, so I'm delighted to be a part of it. My goal is to maximize, optimize our time together, so we'll start with our overarching scripture coming from Proverbs 29:18, where there's no vision, the people perish. Where there's no vision, the people perish. So this whole notion of biblical engagement strategies, how do we cultivate a new generation of faith leaders in the public square is the topic. So it's important for us to have a God-given vision, a God-ordained vision around what that means for each and every one of us. Personally, professionally, in terms of our congregations, in terms of our organizations, in terms of our companies. And I'll say more about that. Again, we all know, I won't belabor the point, we are losing a generation of believers. Again, the research indicates that Christianity is still strong. It's growing globally, particularly in certain markets, but it's within the United States of America where we have some major challenges. The rise in secularization, the rise in the religious norms, we have a lot of issues. And again, we are responsible. We're accountable. God has entrusted us with this generation. So ponder this, if you will, my colleagues. The Christian leadership pipeline will be established by design or by default. The choice is yours. The Christian leadership pipeline will be established by design or by default. The choice is yours. And so what I mean simply is that we may leave it to chance or allow the next generation to deal with it. Or we may choose to be prayerful and thoughtful and proactive and strategic and intentional. And I am going to encourage us to take the latter approach. So my goal is to provide you with an overview of the Judson University Biblical Literacy Project. We call it the BLP, and also share results and implications. I first engaged with Judson University as a commencement speaker a few years ago, and then was invited to serve on the board of trustees by the president, Dr. Gene Kroon. It's been a joy. Judson University is a small Christian institution right outside of Chicago, about 1,000 students, undergrad and graduate, and it's a very diverse community. The student population represents over 28 countries and 43 states within the United States, so quite a diverse community. So here's where we're going, a brief overview of the Biblical Literacy Project, research findings, and then the path forward. What does it mean for you as a leader? What does it mean for your organization, your university, your ministry, your congregation? Gen Z is a critical demographic in all sectors. So, I'm blessed to be the founder and principal of Stewart Consulting. As I mentioned before, a little bit of what's not on the bio. I was born and raised in my uncle's church in Dayton, Ohio. So instead of being a PK, I'm a PN. And I grew up in a household with my younger brother and my mom and dad. So the Christian worldview approach was really instilled in me at a very young age. First accepted Christ at the age of 10 and was baptized, later baptized again at the age of 24. So God has really called me to marketplace ministry. So my book, Revelations in Business, is all about connecting your business plans with God's purpose and plan for your life. It's been endorsed by a number of leaders, including Dan Cathy, the chairman of Chick-fil-A. But a few years ago, I just graduated from Harvard University. I was serving in a leadership role with the Harvard Business School, so I had zero social life. It's Harvard. And so God called me out to focus full-time on the platform that He'd given me. And I've always been consulting on the side for years, since 2007. But He made it abundantly clear that the season was over. And so I resigned from Harvard and to focus full-time on the platform. And it has been a joy. So I'm so blessed and fortunate to have a myriad of clients, from Microsoft and the Coca-Cola Company and Texas Instruments to strong faith-based organizations like Chick-fil-A and the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities. So I support them in two ways: strategic planning, spend a lot of time developing business plans to grow revenue for the organizations, and also facilitating strategic planning sessions with CEOs, the boards of directors, university presidents, and the board of trustees. And also spent quite a bit of time traveling and keynoting conferences. I was in Trinidad a few months ago. I will be in Seoul, Korea, speaking at the Lausanne movement later this year. So this was the entree to the BLP. The president of Judson University said, I really want you to help us targeted at university presidents and Christian leaders like yourselves to help us think strategically around how do we engage a new generation around the Bible. What does that look like? What does it mean? So I'll share with you a brief overview of the project. So the Biblical Literacy Project was actually established back in 2022. The committee consists of about 10 people. In addition to President Kroon, the president of Dallas Baptist University, Dr. Adam Wright, is also on the committee. We have some Gen Z folks on the committee. We have some research analysts, some consultants. Very powerful committee and very thought-provoking in terms of the different perspectives. The goal is to make the Bible more relevant to Gen Z. And so we're using Barna's definition as Gen Z being those individuals born between 1999 and 2015. So our strategy was really to leverage experiential learning, make it come to life for these students. So the research question that we were pondering is this: to what extent does an experiential learning opportunity with peers in a dynamic structure increase Gen Z students' awareness, understanding, and engagement of the Bible? Awareness, understanding, and engagement of the Bible. So this is our methodology. So we partnered strategically with certain entities, one of which is the Museum of the Bible. And how many, again, have had the opportunity to visit the museum? Excellent. Again, hopefully all of you will have the opportunity to visit. I'll share more about the Museum of the Bible. We also partnered with the Filament Bible because it's very interactive, very engaging, and there's an app associated. And we know Gen Z, they love apps. They grew up with apps, right? So that's part of their culture. We also included SurveyMonkey for ease and efficiency in conducting surveys with it. So this was a road trip a year ago. In May, a 3-day road trip from Chicago to Washington, D.C. There were 46 students involved in the pilot program, and 8 what we call shepherds or chaperones. And those 8 chaperones that was probably the longest trip of their entire lives on the bus with them. They're still trying to get over that whole experience. It worked out though. So the agenda included a lot of prayer and worship on the bus. After they arrived at their hotels, intermittently back at the hotels, they used their Filament Bibles, the app, so they had assignments to look up different scripture references relative to a curriculum that was in place for them. Tour the museum, formal tour of the museum, and then they had group discussions on a lot of biblical topics. There were also times that they watched in the evening faith-based movies. So they had popcorn and snacks at the hotel and watched certain movies. And then we conducted a pre-wave survey, mid and post-trip survey, just to gauge, their understanding of the Bible. And I have to say, it was overwhelmingly a positive experience for all. But back to the Museum of the Bible, I want you to be thinking about, especially those of you who are really concerned about targeting Gen Z, whether it's for your congregation, your ministries, your organizations. Museum of the Bible was an outstanding partner because they provided that dynamic structure. So for those of you who have not had the opportunity to visit, I brought a few pictures, and the pictures really do not do it justice, as many of my colleagues who've been there will find. But this is the actual entryway to the museum. You'll see some external photos of the museum. It's around the corner from the African American Museum in DC. At the top of the museum, there's actually a hotel with a huge ballroom. It's gorgeous. So a lot of dignitaries will stay there. It's 6 levels, and the students loved the museum. I loved the Museum of the Bible. I spent an entire day there, and it still wasn't enough. So they have over 7,000 translations of the Bible. They're on site. 7,000. And then what we all were just enamored with was, the Museum of the Bible is all about the Bible's impact on the world. On the world. So, business, academics, politics, women's leadership, racism, and even fashion. So there's this picture's a picture of the fashion section, where they have Versace and Dolce & Gabbana, and how some of the designs were inspired by biblical principles. Amazing. And another very popular spot was the music area. So if you think about your favorite musician, your favorite artist, could be any genre, country, jazz, gospel, doesn't matter. You type in the name of your favorite musician, and then out comes digitally all the songs that person has sung that reference the Bible in some way, shape, or form. So it has the lyric, it has the Bible reference, and the scripture actually indicated there. It's phenomenal. There's an area where you can walk through the New Testament, walk through the Old Testament, and they have short and long-term exhibits. And another really interesting feature is that at some of the top floors, I think it's the 5th or 6th floor, there's a simulated ride. So you actually get in and you buckle up, and you feel as if you are flying through the air, and it takes you, specifically devoted to Washington, D.C., so it takes you to monuments within the D.C. area where there's biblical scriptures inscribed that we had no idea. No idea. The students love it. So I want you to be thinking about your Gen Z target audience. This is very important, that whole interaction, the immersive experience. So these are some of the students as they went through their tour of the Museum of the Bible, and also had more discussions when they were back on campus. So what were their research findings? Again, overwhelmingly positive. We had a short, just a very small group, only 46 students, but it was a start. So this was our initial pilot program. But I want you to think about this. As you think about an equation, and an equation for what we learned from the study, this is the equation that I would submit to you. Experiential opportunity plus digital engagement plus intentional interaction equals increased biblical literacy for Gen Z. Okay, so I'll say that again. Experiential opportunity, so they want to be able to experience whatever it is. So think about your respective sectors, think about your roles. They want to be able to experience it. Plus digital engagement, incorporate some type of digital platform, an app, some type of digital technology. Plus intentional interaction. So that means that as leaders, we have to be proactive. We have to plan that interaction. They're focused on their phones. They're not going to plan anything. So it's up to us. Intentional interaction drives increased biblical literacy. So that was our key learning. So just to break it down a little bit more, in terms of key findings, we learned that experiential learning that engages the senses with peers. Think about that. The senses with peers increases the students' interest and understanding. So in other words, they do not want us to give them free gift cards to the Museum of the Bible where they can go by themselves. No, they want to experience it with their friends, with their classmates. So think about that in your respective areas. How might that play out for your organization? So with peers, the pilot program also confirmed, I think intuitively and intellectually, we all know this, Gen Z does not learn the way that previous generations learned. And so we know that. So this just confirmed it yet again for us. So many leaders in academia are unfortunately still teaching for the 20th century, not the 21st century, right? And definitely not the 22nd century. Forward thinking, remember that? Yeah, that's why we're here. We must adapt new methodologies for Bible training, spiritual formation, discipleship to engage this generation. It really has to be the proverbial paradigm shift in each and every area in terms of our sectors. So the next steps will be a second pilot program. It actually will be starting in the next few weeks. So for the 2024 pilot program, so the learning continues for us. I'm so excited because we're going to bring in two of my client partners. Dallas Baptist University is actually going to send some of their students to the Museum of the Bible. So same experience, we're just adding some new students. So I've had the honor and privilege of serving as a keynote speaker for their Institute for Global Engagement. So I'm excited that they'll be joining us, President Wright, and also President Deb Schwinn from Palm Beach Atlantic University is going to be included. She's going to bring some of her students. So I had the opportunity to serve as her speaker, keynote speaker for their Titus Center for Franchising. So I will be working on a second white paper. If any of you are interested, it will be published towards the end of this year. So stay in touch and I'll keep you apprised. This is just a fun word cloud of the verbatims from some of the participants. Inspiring, awesome, interactive. The students really loved the experience. And based on the questionnaire, it did engage their interest around the Bible. And that's what we want, even baby steps. So the path forward in the conclusion, I want to share a few implications for you. Again, this is about the public square. You all are representing a myriad of areas of sectors. So what does it mean for you and your team? What does it mean for you as a leader? So here are some recommendations. One epiphany I will share with you in the spirit of transparency in terms of the path forward. That was a key learning for me. And I included this in the paper. One of the greatest deceptions in Christian higher education is assumption. The assumption that students know the Bible. That's right. The assumption that students know the Bible. Quite frankly, it was startling to me because I expected that students at a Christian college or university had been exposed to the Bible, that they had an appreciation. And my colleagues in academia, they know. They're giving you a reality check right now. I was shocked, though, quite frankly. As a new trustee on the university board, I expected that they knew at least something. They may not be reading the Bible every day, but I was shocked. And I will share with you a very disturbing story that still, I just can't even believe. One young man shared with me, and keep in mind, many Christian colleges and universities are dealing with these issues around engaging Gen Z, not just Judson. I have so many Christian colleges and universities as clients, they're all grappling with it. But this young man said, Dr. Stewart, in my classes, the believers are becoming the minority. The believers are becoming the minority at a Christian college. Then he went on to say that the believers are becoming kind of quiet. They don't want to speak up in the classes because of fear of ridicule. Wow. Because of fear of ridicule. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Christian college. I was stunned. My colleagues in academia, you've heard this. I was stunned. Ladies and gentlemen, we have significant and substantial work to do. We have to take this seriously. We are truly losing a generation. I couldn't believe that. I still am astounded by that. So what does it mean for you? What are some recommendations and implications for you as leaders, wherever you are in the public square, regardless of your sector? These are some key learnings. Number one, pray. James 1:5 says that he gives wisdom to all who ask, and he gives it liberally and without reproach. So we must be diligent, intentional, consistent in praying and asking for godly wisdom. The strategies that he shares for you may be different from for the ones that he shares with one of your colleagues. So it's important to begin with prayer. And then secondarily, engage your public square constituents holistically. Holistically. So think in terms of cultural organizations, business, academia, churches, other nonprofits. Think holistically and creatively. One way to think about this is take a moment and think about your strategic partners that you have in place today. What are those business partners that you have in place today who might help you engage Gen Z? What are some of those high-value donors or sponsors that you have in place today? Perhaps they can help you engage Gen Z. So keep in mind, focus on some of the partners you already have in place because they understand you, they appreciate you, they respect what you're doing. So start at home and then look broadly at the other constituents in society. The next point is to consider the learning ecosystem within your entire organization. So this is particularly for my colleagues who are operating within the confines of a corporation or a more formalized company. Certainly you have an HR platform in place. You probably have a learning and development platform in place. work within those confines, make some recommendations on how the company, how the organization might engage Gen Z, but make sure you make those recommendations that will reinforce the current strategic imperatives that you already have in place. You get that? Yeah, you make the recommendations, but make sure you tie them to the strategic imperatives of the organization. Identify an executive sponsor. If you are not the executive sponsor, make sure you have a C-suite executive, someone who is supportive of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of not just targeting Gen Z, but targeting any generation. Make sure you have an executive sponsor. Make sure you include Gen Z. The Gen Z folks on our committee give us a reality check weekly, and we appreciate it. Before we get down the wrong path, they will reel us in. So, develop a strategic plan. I did my doctoral dissertation on strategic planning, so I'm very pro strategic planning. So I would encourage you, whatever the initiative is, make sure you have a solid strategic business plan around it. Twofold benefit. Number one, it aligns you and your team members. And make sure that you and your team members are aligned with the mission and vision. The second benefit, and many of you know this, it sets you up if you're interested in external funding. If you're trying to qualify for more grants, if you're trying to engage more high-value sponsors or donors or external investors, have a strategic plan. That sets you apart from so many nonprofits that they're just simply, they're filling out the paper, just the application. So have a plan in place. One of my clients in Dallas is a Christian nonprofit, and they said, Shelette, we're so dependent on the same revenue streams. Can you help us develop a strategic ministry plan? So I worked with them. Their plan was like 150, 200 pages long, but guess what? They ended up being awarded a $2.5 million grant from the Kellogg Foundation. That's the way to do it. My colleague who's an economist, yes, that's the way we do it. So have a strategic plan. Allocate resources, financial and human, leverage pilot programs or test programs. Test it out with one strategic partner, just to work it out. Test it out in one geographic market. Do a pilot program similar to what we're doing, just to gain the key learnings. Consider the ramifications for other departments. So if you're within a large organization, consider the impact on finance, on marketing, on operations. So consider that. If you're in academia, consider the other disciplines within academia, and invite intra and interdepartmental communication and collaboration. So certainly within your department, but also cross-department. That's how you gain buy-in. That's how you gain alignment with your colleagues who are maybe in other departments. And then lastly, communicate the results and the best practices. Definitely communicate them internally. That will let your board of directors and your senior executive leadership team know the wonderful work that you are doing. But I encourage you to communicate your best practices and your studies broadly. Do a white paper. Develop a case study. Submit an op-ed. So put it on a blog. Make sure that you're socializing it so that others can benefit. What I love about the Oxford Colloquy is that we have so many multidisciplinary leaders represented here. This is very unusual, right? Usually when we're at professional conferences, it's everyone in that particular industry. This is very unique. So that's why I commend Dr. Harris and Bishop Gayton, because this is productive, it's constructive, it's rich conversation. So make sure that you are socializing and that the information dissemination is in place on the best practices that you're seeing within your organization. And lastly, assess, evaluate, and focus on continuous improvement. So we're all investing time in the colloquy. We're all busy. We want a return on the investment. So I'm going to encourage you to think about what will you do next and what will you do differently. Not just from my presentation, but the other presentations. What will you do next and what will you do differently? You know, in order to have a return on our invested time, it typically involves doing something or something differently, right? We all know the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So I encourage you to be thoughtful and intentional and just recording a couple of key action items. I also encourage you to share these insights with your colleagues who are not with us. your next leadership team meeting, share some of these insights. If you are actively engaged with Gen Z, share some of these insights. Get their feedback and say, hey, we heard about this study. Would this work with you all? Would this work in our city? Begin the communication and the collaboration. That is how we positively impact the culture. I have a list of resources for me. The first one is always going to be the Holy Bible. I've included my book, Revelations in Business, Connecting Your Business Plan with God's Purpose and Plan for Your Life. It's actually available on Amazon. I also included some of my Harvard Business School cases because I think that even though they're secular and focused, the best practices we can leverage for our Christian worldview initiatives. And then a host of other books. I see people taking pictures. I'll go ahead and I'll go to the next slide. And I'll make sure that you have this. I want to encourage you in conclusion that your history is a part of his story. Mm-hmm. Keep it in perspective. You all are doing outstanding work, exceptional work. I know it gets stressful at times and challenging at times, but your work is not in vain. Your history is a part of his story. And what I mean is simply that the outstanding work that you all are doing each and every day in your respective fields is a testament to God and his sovereignty through Jesus Christ. Yeah. So keep up the excellent work, because at the end of our journeys, what we all want to hear is well done, good and faithful servant, well done. Thank you. Well done.